Hey guys, for this video I thought I'd do something a bit different, not talk about video games for a change. I want to actually talk about movies. More specifically, I want to talk to you guys about 20 of my favorite movies. This isn't going to be like a top 20 list. This is just 20 movies I've chosen that I absolutely love. Um, I've decided also to not like pick. I've picked one movie per director. I can't have like one director and choose like a bunch of his movies. If I were to do that, like Martin Scorsese, for instance, like pretty much all of his movies would be on my list. Um, Movies is something like video games I'm also really passionate about. Now, I will say if my opinions on movies are a bit more. I'll probably say jaded. With video games, I try to keep positive. I love pretty much the majority of video games I play and can look past flaws pretty easily. With movies, I find, especially these days, honestly, most of them are shit. I know, this is all opinion, but every time I see a trailer for a new movie, I just look at it and it just makes me mad. I don't know, there's so many movies that everything's just been done, I feel. And that's not to say there aren't great movies coming out. It's just nowadays, the really good films to me are the ones that play at film festivals and that a lot of people don't have access to. For instance, where I am, I'm in a small town, in the theater here, the movies they choose to show are ridiculous. Like, they always choose the most safe, like, utter garbage movies, yet really good movies. For instance, The Master, Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. That's a movie I really wanted to see, and they didn't play it here because, I don't know, they'd rather play some, I don't know, crap. But anyways, enough about that. Let's go into my 20 favorite movies, or 20 of my favorite movies. I'm going to start out with True Romance. Actually, this is one of only two of these movies I actually own the DVD. A lot of these I don't actually own. I owned them all at one point, and then I stupidly sold pretty much all my DVDs, which was a huge mistake. I need to get them back. True Romance, a Tony Scott film. He actually recently killed himself, which is very sad. I have to say, of all his movies, I'm not really a huge fan of a lot of them. This was definitely my favorite. Obviously, it's a Quentin Tarantino screenplay. Tarantino is one of my favorite filmmakers, so it's probably no big surprise that this would be my favorite of his. This is basically just, a comic book nerd's kind of ultimate dream come true. He meets this really hot girl, and then he gets into all sorts of crazy shit. This movie's famous for the Sicilian scene. If you don't know what that is, well, watch this movie for one. It's a scene between Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken, and it is just one of the best scenes in movie history, I think. But other than that, you've got great acting all around the board. Typical Tarantino flourishes all over the place here. His script in here isn't, you can tell it's not quite as strong as some of his later movies or something like Pulp Fiction, for instance. But Tony Scott directs this with a nice hard-hitting style. It's not like crazy visuals like a lot of his later movies, like Domino, for instance. So it's probably an easier movie to get into than those. But this one I've always loved. I've seen it countless times, and I just can't get enough of it, really. So this is definitely one of my favorite movies. Next is Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. Now, this is one of those movies that's known to be hard to watch. A lot of people will watch it. They know that's a great movie, but they will never watch it again. I've seen it twice. I'm at the point where but I might watch it again. It's just, it's one of those movies it's hard to watch because it's about these characters that are suffering with drug addictions, heroin addictions, and this movie just starts off with these characters that are pretty likable, and then it's like this descent into madness, and towards the end of the movie, it gets almost unbearable. The performance from, I believe her name is Ellen Burstyn, or I think she plays this like her addiction is actually not on heroin, it's like pills, and she plays this character that's obsessed with this game show or kind of thing, and she wants to be a part of it so bad that she has like these visions that she's a part of it, and her descent into madness. It is one of the most horrifying and just like you can't keep your eyes off the screen constantly for this movie. It's hard to watch. I won't spoil a lot in this movie, but if there's ever a movie to convince you never to take drugs of any kind, it would be this one. This is it's a tough movie to watch, but man, is it just fascinating, and it's one of my favorite movies. The next one is a classic, 80s classic, The Breakfast Club. I can't get enough of the Breakfast Club. You know, it's obviously it came out, and I wasn't even alive when it came out, but I'm a huge fan of 80s movies, and this one to me is held up the test of time. Just a really funny movie with tons of heart, and just, I don't know, one of those movies I love, and it's weird. I have like this feeling of nostalgia for it, even though I first saw it when I was maybe like 6 or so, but I feel like I have nostalgia for it, yet I wasn't alive when it came out. It's weird. But The Breakfast Club is one of those classic movies that I don't think's overrated in the slightest. Another movie is Collateral. This is a Michael Mann movie. He's a bit hit and miss to me. Miami Vice, like that, I thought that was a fucking terrible movie. But Collateral is a great one, with one of my favorite Tom Cruise performances, where he plays the villain. Collateral, basically, it's got that kinetic Michael Mann style that's just irresistible. Jamie Foxx is amazing in Collateral too. The nightclub scene is one of my favorite scenes, like in any movie. And the chase scene between Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise at the end of the movie is just the suspense is just unbearable in that scene. It's just, I don't know, it's crazy. But definitely my favorite Michael Mann film, with maybe The Insider being closely following Collateral. Another movie is Groundhog Day, just a classic. Groundhog Day is just absolute classic. Bill Murray at his best, I think. It's one of those movies it's kind of like a comedy drama romance where in the early parts of the movie it's very funny, but it actually has this nice romance in it too. So it's actually quite a sweet movie too. So Groundhog Day is, you know, one of those all-time classics that I think when it came out it didn't get really the praise it deserved, and now people are starting to go back to it and say that it's really a wonderful movie. The next movie is an interesting one. Now, it's a David Lynch film. Now, David Lynch is a director that I haven't seen all of his movies. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge David Lynch fan. A lot of his movies, I think, are very frustrating movies to watch. You know, I've never really considered myself a huge fan of his movies. I know a lot of people do love David Lynch films. This one in particular, the first time I watched it, I couldn't help but be absorbed by it. It was just, I just found it entirely fascinating. I just couldn't keep my eyes off of it. I was never bored. I was loving the whole thing. But upon finishing the movie, I actually hated it because I started to think too much on it. And it's one of those movies where the second half is very frustrating. After the first half, I thought was just absolutely brilliant. Then I started to... Then I watched it again because, like, I hate it. I thought I hated this movie. I haven't said with the movie. The movie is Mulholland Drive. Now, I had it in my mind that I hated the movie. Yet, days afterwards, I couldn't stop thinking about it. This movie was just stuck in my head. All the events that happened. It's one of those movies that, you know, I thought I hated it, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it because it was such an absorbing movie, and I wanted to make sense of this movie. So I watched it again, and I loved it. And you know, after watching it the second time, I started to read more into it. And basically, this is now one of my favorite movies of all time. It's got this atmosphere that I just love. It's a very ominous atmosphere. It's about this, you know, actress from Canada that goes to Hollywood, you know, to find her dreams, and basically, I don't want to spoil too much, but it's got like elements of like a noir mystery movie, a film noir mystery movie. It's got like it's just I don't know. I love it. It's so good. It's weird because it was a frustrating watch the first time. It's not like Blue Velvet, which is another one of my favorite David Lynch movies, where the first time I watched it, I immediately loved it. But this one's definitely my favorite. Mulholland Drive is definitely a total crazy movie that, even if you're not too big into David Lynch, if you've seen some of his movies that you didn't like them, watch Mulholland Drive, and actually watch it more than once. It's one of those movies that just begs to be watched more than once. Now, this next movie is one of two that actually released this year in 2012, and I gotta say, actually, 2012, so far this year's been pretty damn good for movies, I must say. I think these last few years have been honestly kind of crappy for movies, but this year I've seen quite a few amazing films, and this is one of them. This particular movie is not one that was nominated for Best Picture. Basically, the Academy kind of snubbed it in a lot of different categories, which is a shame because this movie, anyways, the movie is Cloud Atlas, and what a movie this is, man! Like, one of the most ambitious movies I think I've ever seen. Independently funded, yet a massive budget. You know, a bunch of well-known actors playing many different characters. It's like 6 different storylines, and they're all kind of connected in an interesting way. But you have all these actors playing different characters in each of these storylines. You know, and the makeup effects in this movie are all over the place, and they're absolutely crazy. You have like white people playing Asian people. Yeah, it's just the most crazy movie I think I've ever seen, and I applaud it for that. It can be a bit disjointed. It's you know, some of the dialogue maybe a bit falls flat. Maybe it's a bit of a mess, but who cares when it's this ambitious and this. I find it to be an original movie. I haven't read the novel that it's based on, but visually too. I mean, like the cinematography, the environments, the world they've crafted here in each of the different storylines is absolutely amazing. One of the storylines, it's the sci-fi one with these like clones. I found that part of the movie so goddamn fascinating. This is a movie that's I think it's like almost 3 hours, but not a single boring second. This movie is just entertaining constantly throughout. It's even got like one story that's like kind of like a comedy type thing where it's like the acting is amazing across the board. I can't speak highly enough of this movie. If you like, I don't think it's on DVD yet or anything. I remember going to the theaters and watching this. I was just completely blown away by this movie, and it's one of those movies too, like Mulholland Drive, that after you've watched it, you start thinking about it. It just sticks in your head, and even it got to me emotionally too. It affected me emotionally, which if a movie can do that, it's a great film. It's really, I can't say enough about this. Cloud Atlas, it's definitely one of the most underrated movies of this year, and it's already ranked as one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Now the next movie is a Stanley Kubrick film, obviously one of the greatest directors that ever lived. And I really thought hard about what my favorite Kubrick film is, because I like a lot of them. And I settled with Full Metal Jacket. Now, that's going to be an interesting choice. I know a lot of people will be claiming, 2001: Space Odyssey, which I'm not actually a big fan of that movie. Clockwork Orange, I love. That would probably be my second pick. Now, Full Metal Jacket is interesting in the sense that the second half of the movie, the actual, when they're actually at war, that's where the movie kind of does fall apart to me. It's got like, a typical message at the end. It's filled with these kind of set pieces that aren't bad. Like the second half of the movie is not bad. It's just kind of, I don't know, by the numbers and done better in a movie like Platoon, for instance. But the first half of Full Metal Jacket is, in my opinion, the best things Kubrick's ever done. That first half of Full Metal Jacket is what makes the movie my favorite. It is one of the most horrific things I've ever watched. Vincent, I don't know how to say his last name, D'Onofrio or something. He plays this, this recruit. Like it's set up in a recruitment camp for the army, and he's just the general or colonel. I don't know. He's just constantly like at this guy, like, and this guy's kind of like overweight, and he fails at basically all the tests and everything. He's basically not fit to be a soldier, and he's just he's just getting bullied, and just it is just the most horrific thing. And his descent into like madness, this character's is it's nuts. If you haven't seen Full Metal Jacket, watch it just for the first half alone. It's definitely really powerful stuff, and every time I watch it, I'm just amazed at like the acting on display, and just I don't know, it's perfect. And that's what makes Full Metal Jacket my favorite of Kubrick's films. Now, my next film is a film by the Coen brothers. Now, the Coen brothers, you know, pretty much every movie they've done I love. No Country for Old Men is amazing. Bird After Reading is a very underrated film of theirs. Barton Fink is awesome. The Big Lebowski is a classic. But my favorite is the typical choice, and that's Fargo. This movie's got everything. It's got humor, it's got heart, it's got moments of like, you know, unpredictable violence. It's such an interesting story. The characters are so goddamn likable in this. The performances are absolutely fantastic. I love the setting of the film. To me, it is their masterpiece. I don't know if it will ever be topped, to be honest. Every Coen Brothers film I've seen since hasn't quite lived up to Fargo. But yeah, one of those films that it didn't win Best Picture. What beat it? Shakespeare in Love, I think? Or no, did that? I don't remember. Oh no, The English Patient. Yeah, The English Patient beat it, which is ridiculous. Like that is an overrated movie. The fact that beat Fargo, like, unbelievable. But Fargo, you know, one of the greatest films, I think, of all time. Just, if you haven't seen Fargo, definitely go out and see it. Just an amazing film. The next movie I have here is actually, I think it's the only movie on here that's a foreign film. I should really watch more of these. Actually, I just thought of one right now that I actually don't... I made up a list of my favorite movies here, and actually I'll talk about that next. This next movie, I forgot to put it in my list. It's another foreign movie. But this one is City of God. This is one of those movies that's thoroughly entertaining. It's got a great story. It's also hard to watch. There's one particular scene. It's basically about like about kind of like gangs in you know, a very rough part of Brazil, growing, you know, these kids that grow up, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's got like a kind of like a Scorsese, like Goodfellas kind of feel a lot of the times, this movie, but it's got a lot of scenes that are very tough to watch. There's one particular scene that every time I watch this movie, it breaks my heart seeing this scene. It just gets to me like a lot of movies don't, but it's got the really kinetic pace. A lot of the characters are very likable, a lot of them unlikable, but the acting is great across the board. A lot of horrific scenes, but it really shows that, you know, it shows that like how hard it is for like these kids that grow up in these conditions, yet they can't, you know, they have nowhere else to go. They have to, you know, it's a tough movie to watch, but endlessly fascinating, and it really well made. It's such a beautiful movie to look at too, but definitely one of my favorites. Now for that other movie I mentioned. So technically this is 21 of my favorite movies. This one is from South Korean director Park Chan-wook. Now this is the second movie as a part of a trilogy called the Vengeance Trilogy, and unfortunately I haven't seen the first or third parts yet. I really should. But this movie is called Old Boy. If you can seek out this movie, please, you have to watch this movie. This is an amazing, powerful film. It's got a really interesting plot where this guy is kind of trapped in this room. He gets like, you know, captured and put in this room with like only a TV, I think. It's been a while since I've seen it, but he gets trapped in this room for like 30 years, and then all of a sudden one day he gets let out. So he basically, the whole plot is him basically trying to get revenge on the person that put him there. And there's a twist at the end of this movie that is just insane. This movie's also, like City of God, got a lot of scenes that are tough to watch. But there's some action scenes in here too that are just, they're shot so, like, this movie's got a lot of unique shots, and just, I don't know, it's just a really captivating film that just holds your interest all the way through, and definitely one of the better plot twists I've seen in a movie. So I can't believe I forgot about this one. Old Boy. Definitely, if you can find it, please go out and watch this movie. It's amazing. Amazing, amazing film. Now, this next movie is one I'm kind of bitter about, and that's Shawshank Redemption. You know, this movie came out, made no money back in 1994. You know, I was pretty young back then, but Forrest Gump beat it for Best Picture, and Pulp Fiction probably would have won if Forrest Gump didn't. Yet, I think this movie's better than both of those combined. And I love Pulp Fiction. Forrest Gump I like too, but it's overrated. Shawshank Redemption is just, man. Frank Darabont directed this. He's one of my favorite directors. Every movie he's done has been great. The Green Mile I love. The Majestic I even love. I think that's a very underrated movie. And The Mist is by far one of the most underrated horror movies ever. But this is just a really powerful, fascinating film with one of the greatest twists. I know I said Old Boy previously. It had a great plot twist. This one does too. Basically, it's a pretty simple story about this guy that's kind of you think he's wrongfully put in prison, and he is basically. But it's basically just his experiences going through prison, and a lot of like a lot of movies I like. I know I tend to gravitate toward these movies that have like kind of a dark side to them. Like this movie does in quite a few scenes. But this character, everyone hates him at first, and he gets the shit kicked out of him, and there's some other stuff. But eventually, everyone comes to like him in this prison, and and it's basically just his experiences in this prison. I don't want to spoil too much if you haven't seen it, but definitely go out and seek this movie. I think on the IMDb list, it's like number 1 or 2. It's definitely got a lot more praise nowadays for it than it did back when it came out. A lot of people now consider it one of the greatest films of all time, and I'm definitely right there with a lot of people. I think this is a fantastic movie. Definitely my favorite prison-themed film. Definitely Shawshank Redemption, awesome movie. Now the next movie is not one of those movies that's considered like the best of all time or anything like that. It's one of those movies that's almost kind of a guilty pleasure, but not really, because I know a lot of people that do like it. It had a remake not too long ago that I refused to watch. Anyways, that's Total Recall. My favorite Paul Verhoeven movie, he did RoboCop, which is another one of my favorite all-time movies. But this is my favorite of his. It's also my favorite Schwarzenegger film, with The Last Action Hero being behind that, actually. I know a lot of people hate that movie. I think that's a really clever and fun movie. Maybe a bit too long, but I don't know. I love The Last Action Hero. But Total Recall, this is one of my favorite science fiction movies where it's dark, it's got a thought-provoking storyline that's, clever without being too stupid. The dialogue is fun. The action scenes are fun and violent. It's not too long, doesn't overstay its welcome. The effects, back then, the effects in this movie were known to be like, they were crazy back when this released. They're maybe a bit dated now, but I still think there are a lot of good effects in this movie. The action scenes are great. It's just, the movie's got a great sense of humor about it, like a lot of Verhoeven's films, like RoboCop before it. But it's just one of those movies that's just a whole lot of fun to watch, while at the same time being thought-provoking. Minority Report is similar to that too, where that's one of those movies that, yeah, it's got the exciting action scenes, but it also has a thought-provoking storyline to it as well. And Total Recall is right there in terms of that. Schwarzenegger, of course, he's not a good actor, but he's just exciting and fun to watch, and I wouldn't have any other actor replace him for this movie. That remake, though, fuck that remake. I know apparently it's okay, but I mean, like, it's the typical PG-13, drab, boring, generic remake, and Len Wiseman, the director, everything he's done, I think, has been complete crap. But anyways, Total Recall, definitely one of my favorite movies, and it's got like this nostalgic quality to it, because I did see it when I was really young, but I've seen it a lot since, and it never gets old. It's just such a great classic movie, I think. The next movie's from a director that, honestly, every movie he's done I like. Even his first movie, which I know a lot of people don't like, I still like it a lot. The director's David Fincher. The movie is Seven. Now, that other movie is Alien 3. I know a lot of people hate that. I actually kind of like Alien 3. It's nowhere near as bad as fucking Alien Resurrection. Now, that is a bad movie. But Seven is definitely my favorite of his. I really like these kind of dark crime dramas. The Seven's almost a horror movie, actually. What I love about this movie, though, is just the tone and atmosphere. It's just really dark and foreboding, and just, it's got that, you know, mystery movie type feel. And the twists that they throw at you are so anti-Hollywood. It's amazing that this movie got the success that it did, considering all the subject matter in it and the ending. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but my God, is the ending awesome. It's so, it's fantastic. I'm not going to talk more about this movie because it will get into spoiler territories. If you haven't seen Seven, though, an amazing dark thriller. Definitely my favorite Fincher film. After that would probably be The Social Network. That's like that movie. That movie is a great one too. But Seven is awesome. The next movie appeared on my top 10 horror movies list. It's the only one I have included on this list. Just to you know, you can check out that list if you want to see some of my favorite horror movies. This is my #1 horror movie, and that is John Carpenter's The Thing. Honestly, in my opinion, this is the greatest horror movie ever made, and it will never be beaten. You know, I think, you know, you could argue maybe Alien, the original Alien, comes close, but to me, for my money, The Thing is the greatest horror movie. You know, this is back when there weren't no CGI effects. You know, it's all, like, the effects in this movie still hold up so well. They're completely grotesque and just horrific to look at. And this is, you know, this movie focuses more on the characters, which a lot of horror movies need to go back to this, where they focus on the characters and, you know, where you don't want them to die. And a lot of this is the interactions between the characters and just, you know, which one of them is the thing. You know, a lot of this movie's also got like mystery elements, which I love. I love mystery movies. So like this has got elements of that. I love the setting. You know, the winter setting is just fantastic. It's a genuinely scary movie with unbearable amounts of tension. It's just one of my all-time favorites. I remember watching it when I was like, I want to say 5. I rented it from like Blockbuster. I'll be honest, this movie fucking gave me nightmares when I was a kid. One particular scene, Defibrillator, if anyone's watched it, you know what that scene is. But even if you don't like horror movies, I'd say go out and watch this. You know, I'm not the biggest horror movie fan, but The Thing is just, it's an all-time classic. It's seriously, I think it's one of those movies that was unfortunate where when it came out, apparently it didn't make any money, it got poor reviews, and now opinions are starting to change on it. People are looking back on it and saying, oh yeah, that was actually an amazing movie. But yeah, John Carpenter's The Thing, absolutely phenomenal. Now, Steven Spielberg. Interesting thing about Steven Spielberg. You know, I'm not going to say he's overrated or anything. I've never considered him one of my favorite directors. Obviously, he's made some classic films. Jurassic Park is one I love. That's classic. You know, of course, the Indiana Jones movies, which I like those movies. I'm not crazy about them like a lot of people are. Jaws is another one. I like it, but I don't love it. Now, Schindler's List, that's a masterpiece. Although that's one of those movies that I watched it once. I don't need to watch it again. But this movie, it's my favorite Spielberg movie, and that's Munich, which is, I found this interesting. It doesn't really feel like a Spielberg movie, other than, like, I don't know, the ending, perhaps. But it's a smaller film than ones he usually does. His movies are usually pretty big and epic feeling, but not this one. I don't know. I always just I always watch this one more so than his others. Maybe it's the subject matter I find a bit more interesting than a lot of his other movies, and the tone I think is quite a bit more darker than in a lot of his movies. I don't know. It's a really fascinating movie, and I've always loved it. The only thing I don't like about it is the ending. I think the ending's kind of weird, and I don't know. But yeah, Munich. If you haven't seen Munich, definitely watch it. It's very different. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a Spielberg film to me, and that's like one of the reasons why I like it. It's odd, I know, but yeah, it's actually one of my favorite movies. I really love Munich. Now, the next movie is another movie that, like Cloud Atlas, came out this year, and that's Django Unchained. I'll say it now, this is my favorite Tarantino movie, and it's definitely by far my favorite movie of 2012, with, what else? Yeah, probably Cloud Atlas behind that, and then Argo. Argo was amazing. But Django Unchained, to me, this is I feel like it's Tarantino's most consistently entertaining movie. A lot of his movies have like maybe some small sections where they're kind of boring, or I don't know, they kind of meander. But not this movie. This movie was constantly engaging, crazily entertaining, but had a lot of horrors to it too. It's I don't know. It's one of his most emotionally affecting movies, I think. And for that, I think that's one of the reasons why I love this so much. And then I just, I love the spaghetti western stylings of it. The acting across the board amazing. Christoph Waltz, again, I mean, that guy is a phenomenal actor. Leonardo DiCaprio had his villain character was absolutely amazing. A lot of people say it's overlong. I didn't feel that at all. This is like a almost 3-hour movie with not a single boring second, and that's like some of my favorite movies are those movies that are able to be long or basically are entertaining throughout, where you're never bored. That to me, those are the signs that it's a successful and awesome movie. But Django Unchained, yeah, my favorite Tarantino movie, and by far my favorite movie to come out this year. If you haven't seen it yet, it's probably off theaters now, but when it comes out on DVD, definitely watch it. It's amazing. Now, my next movie is a comedy. Comedies are interesting in the sense that I always watch them, but I'm always disappointed in them. A lot of comedies, I like to judge them on like a hit or miss ratio. Does it hit more than it misses in terms of the jokes? Now, this comedy is one of two, maybe three, that I've seen where I was laughing the whole way through, and on various occasions laughed so hard that I cried. If a movie can get that reaction out of me, it's pretty fucking funny. And this movie is, now probably heralded as a classic, and that's Borat. Now, I will say I'm a Sacha Baron Cohen. I'm kind of a fanboy of his. The Ali G Show is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Like that show, maybe Kenny versus Spenny, which that's a Canadian show. I don't know if many of you know that show. That and the Ali G Show are the only shows to make me laugh so hard that I cry. And when I watch it still now, it still makes me laugh so hard. And Borat does that too. I know his movies seem to be getting worse. I think a lot of people find that. I know The Dictator, a lot of people didn't like that. I still fucking love that movie. I laughed majority of it hard. Bruno is another one, which I can see why people would not like that. Homophobes, I think, would hate that movie. I gotta share my theater experience with that quick, with Bruno. When I went to see that movie, I saw it with a couple of friends of mine. The theater was basically empty. You had like an old guy at the bottom, that's like a 70-year-old man, and then you had like a guy, like a 20-year-old guy and his girlfriend there. Me and my friends, the whole entire movie, just howling with laughter. Every single scene in that movie we thought was hilarious. But the guy and his girlfriend were quiet the entire time, and you could tell this guy wanted to laugh so hard, because you could hear him like chuckle a bit. But the girlfriend, like, she was quiet through the whole movie, and you can tell she was not finding this shit funny at all. And I'm sure he didn't want to laugh to, like, upset her or whatever. And the old guy, I don't know why he was there. Like, I found that odd. And he stayed through the whole movie, but he didn't laugh once. I don't know. It was just one of the weirdest, but most hilarious theater experiences I had. But Borat, just hilarious from start to finish. The kind of offensive humor that he has, I gotta admit, well, in terms of humor, I kind of laugh more at the kind of really like cringe and offensive humor. I don't know, that's just what I always gravitate towards. So you could say maybe it's a bit mean-spirited, but I don't know. I just find every single part of Borat is just it just makes me laugh so hard. The one scene I think is the most telling. Like, there's a scene where he's on the bus with like the university frat boy students. Like that scene, there's so many layers to that scene. And I just can't stop laughing throughout that scene. It's one of those movies that that's smart yet hilarious at the same time. But yeah, Borat, not only one of my favorite comedies, one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, the next is a movie from a director where I've loved all of his work, the director Paul Thomas Anderson, and the movie is Magnolia. Now, a lot of people will probably say There Will Be Blood, and yes, I agree. I think that movie is a better movie. I don't know, it's a better movie. I think that's his masterpiece. Magnolia, though, is my personal favorite. Magnolia, to me, is just, it's like these interconnected stories, but they're all fascinating. It's got some of the best performances I've seen in a movie. Tom Cruise, for instance, like this is still his best performance. I think he plays like this self-help kind of instructor guy. I don't want to spoil too much of this movie. But there's just a bunch of crazy scenes. Like the acting is top notch. The dialogue is amazing. It's one of those movies where it's like Cloud Atlas. It's one of those ambitious movies that could be seen as maybe pretentious or overindulgent, but I don't know. I loved every second of it. Another one of those movies where never bored through the entire thing. I don't know. It's just the one that that kept me with me the most out of all his films. But yeah, Magnolia, definitely a very thought-provoking and just flat-out entertaining movie. And it's unless he could outdo it, but I think for better, I don't know. It's just, I think it will always be my favorite of his films. It's just really crazy. I like a lot of his films. Like Boogie Nights is amazing. The Master, which I watched not too long ago, is amazing as well. So definitely, I think actually Paul Thomas Anderson. Speaking about him, he's one of our best directors, I think, right now. One of our best filmmakers. Like, every movie he's done has been great. So, yeah, Magnolia, definitely a great, great film. Okay, only 2 more movies, and one of them is my favorite movie of all time. Now, this next movie is, this would rank high up there. If I were to do a top 10 movies of all time, this would be probably number 3, actually. This was this is interesting. This movie is, like, now I'm seeing people say this is an overrated movie. Now, this movie in 1999 won Best Picture, and now people are turning around, their opinions have reversed on this movie, saying it's overrated garbage, from what I read on the internet. And I don't agree. I think this movie is amazing, and that's American Beauty. A little story. I remember seeing this movie, like, 1999, by the way. 1999 was one of the best years for movies. Magnolia came out that year, too. Fight Club, I think. Yeah, Fight Club, I think, came out that year, too. 1999 was amazing. But American Beauty, I remember seeing the cover for this movie in Blockbuster when I was a kid, and I thought it was some, chick flick or something like that, because if you've seen the cover, which there'll be a picture of it, I just always thought it was some romance movie or chick flick, so I never wanted to watch it. I don't know what I would think of it back then, because I was only 9 years old when this movie came out. But what an amazing movie. I think people are saying, like, maybe, like, its subject matter is kind of cliched now, and a lot of movies emulated it, like Dark Heart of Suburbia type thing, where suburbia is not all what it seems, and everyone's depressed and unhappy and trying to escape, and just, But I don't know, I think it's one of those movies that's... It's never boring. It got tons of great scenes. It's very thought provoking. It makes you think. Kevin Spacey has never been better than he is in this movie, in my opinion. Just fabulous. It's a funny movie too. It makes you laugh, but at the same time, it's got scenes that are dark and quite hard to watch. It's just, I don't know. It's just such a fascinating, entertaining movie. I've seen it. Jeez, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen it, and it never gets old. It's one of those movies I think I'll always love, and I don't know. I don't know where this... I know a lot of people are saying, like, people around my age are, like, really like this movie, and, once you get older, you start to think it's not that great. But I don't know. So I still love it. I don't really think it's that overrated. I don't know. I think it deserved to win Best Picture. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Okay, and my favorite movie of all time, and that is Martin Scorsese's Casino. Oh my god. Not only is this my favorite movie, I think this is probably one of the most underrated movies ever. Now, Goodfellas came before this, and this shares a lot of similar themes with Goodfellas. It's identical in a lot of ways. It's got the same kind of Joe Pesci character where, Robert De Niro's character is always telling him what to do, and he has these violent outbursts, and he's just crazy. The Robert De Niro character in this, though, is actually quite different than the Robert De Niro character in Goodfellas. They both have, that kind of rise and fall type storyline, although I think it's done to better effect in this movie, to be honest. And it just shares a lot of similar themes. So when this came out, I guess people were like, this is too similar to Goodfellas, and it's not as good, so it got pretty decent reviews, and one of when I was reading reviews, a lot of reviews brought up excessive violence, too violent. Like, I hate when people say that about movies or games or whatever, as like that's a flaw. Like this is about, like, mobsters. It's supposed to be violent, and admittedly, yeah, this movie's pretty fucking violent. But I mean, I don't know how that can be a complaint. But my all-time favorite movie, The Rise and Fall, depicted in this movie is fascinating. You know, I like too how, like, you know, Goodfellas was just like, you know, that mobster story, where this is, yeah, it's got the mobster stuff, but it's also about how they ran the casinos in Vegas, and that stuff is fascinating. You know, being a Scorsese film, you know, the shots are amazing in this movie. It's a beautiful film to look at. It's it's a long one too, but again, it's one of those movies. This movie is 3 hours long with not a single boring second. The acting is amazing. Even Sharon Stone, a lot of people say her performance is not good, which is ironic because, well, she was nominated for Best Actress in a leading role, but I think she's really good in this. It just, I don't know, it's one of those movies, I've seen it countless times. Everyone I show it likes it. I think it's, you know, I think now opinions are changing on it. People are looking at it as like, wow, this is one of his most underrated movies. I don't know, I think it's better than Goodfellas, and I love Goodfellas. In fact, that's my second favorite movie of all time. I love watching Goodfellas and then watching this movie right back to back. That's like 6 hours, but some of the finest 6 hours of entertainment out there. In terms of mobster movies, I actually prefer these two to like Godfather, and I love Godfather as well. But yeah, Casino, my favorite movie of all time. I can't say it will ever be topped. I mean, I don't know. It's just it's one of those movies that just the entertainment I get from it is just, and you know, it's amazing. But with that said, those are 20 of my favorite movies. I think later when I talk about movies, I might talk about maybe ones I find are overrated or underrated, or actually maybe Dustin Christ did a video on guilty pleasure movies. I might do that too, actually, because there's quite a few movies that I know are shit and lots of people think are shit, but I love. But anyways, that's the video, guys. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.